we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever wanted to reach out to the podcast, let us know. If you wanted to hear a new topic to discuss, if you wanted to come on as a guest, please join us. Going to be talking to my buddy Jordan McCarter soon. Really looking forward to that. I just had my buddy Nick Evans on. And again, always love to have new faces join us here. And I'm sure the audience of the Bigmark podcast enjoys it too. But you don't always have to listen to me. There's a bunch of other episodes with guests. And if you like listening to me talk about all this fun stuff, which I hope you do, there's tons of episodes to binge now, 197 other episodes. So dive in, have tons of fun, leave comments, let us know, share with your friends, all that stuff. It's the best way to support the podcast is sharing it. So tell a friend, tell 4 friends, whatever. Make sure they're cool though, because we want cool people listening to the podcast, but we know you're all cool, so you're going to know cool people. So thank you for doing that. If you wanted to support in another way, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod. And there's a few different ways you can send us a couple shekels. So again, thank you so much. I love doing this podcast, and I always say it's an exciting episode. It's going to be a great episode. I'm looking forward to it. And it's true, and I'm totally looking, and I always look forward to our episodes together. But today's a super exciting one because this Friday, if you're listening when this podcast comes out on Wednesday, September 25th, in 2 days we're going to be having our Wreckless Harbour, I should say, my band that I'm in. Shout out Wreckless Harbour, John Harley, Lauren Helder, who's newly married. Shout out Laura, happy marriage. Exciting week for Lauren Helder, my goodness. He just got married on the weekend. And Trevor Roach, all tremendous musicians, all tremendous friends, and I'm happy to be, and more than happy to be in this band and on this journey with them. But Wreckless Harbour, check us out if you haven't before, if you haven't heard, if it's your first time listening to the podcast. Wreckless Harbour, Reckless with a W, like no wrecks in the harbor. And we've been a band for a couple years now, got together just on the trail into COVID, and have been working really hard actually over the last year or so on our new album. And this Friday, we're dropping our new single, Gold, is coming out this Friday. It's going to be on all streaming platforms. We're really excited about this one in the sense because it's our first single coming out, first single on streaming, and it's been interesting being a band as long as we have been and coming out on the end of COVID. We kind of have all the pieces in place. We have, all the guys are in, they're great musicians. Everyone's writing, everyone's contributing, playing shows, great social media presence, I'd say, without even having any streaming, right? All this stuff is all without having streaming. So when you look us up, you see all this action, this activity, but you're kind of like, well, where can I listen to you guys? And we have some songs on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, go check it out right now. I'll probably throw a link up in the video somewhere. But if not, go check us out. If you're watching, pause the video, go check out Wreckless Harbour. We have our YouTube page going, and we have a couple of our own recordings that we did. Literally one was in the backyard, or actually I think 2, but anyway, we did this like little backyard session, and then there's a couple from some live shows, and then a Christmas song or 2. So check that out, and you can kind of get a feel anyway. But nothing's actually studio mixed and sat down and recorded and done that whole thing. And if you go back and listen to our studio recording, the podcast I did talking about the whole process, we can go into a little bit more in depth in general about the recording process. But a lot of the more concerted sitting down actually in the studio working on a song, making sure all the arrangements work and making sure all that stuff works, was done for, of course, this new studio project we're working on. So it's a whole new world. Like I mentioned before in that last podcast, the studio is this whole other branch of music that exists. And I'm always the kid, here on Bigmark podcast, we're talking about anything from sports to psychedelics. So I equate a lot of things, or I use a lot of sports analogies when it comes to a lot of the topics that we cover, especially music. I find music and playing in a band is so similar to being on a team and playing a team sport, that is. And I'm sure being a solo artist is a lot like being an individual athlete, but even then you also are on stage with your band, so who's to say? But I know what I know, and what I know is team sports. And it's always the same. A game is the same as a show. You're prepping for it. You're rehearsing just like practice. You're working. You can work alone on your instrument just like you can work alone on individual skills in sport. Working together as a team on stage when you're playing in those, in those shows, those games, there's nonverbal communication. There's, working together. There's cooperation. There's improvisation, very much like a basketball game. And then there's set songs where you have to be playing that right thing. And if you don't play your right note, it might fuck up the whole thing, which is like football or like other sports. Again, I know what I know, but this is what we're saying. There's always these different analogies that exist, but I still haven't really put my finger on like what the studio is compared to sport. So I think that the studio is this really unique thing that exists in music when you're creating music, other art forms, visual art and stuff, you are creating that art, if you're painting a picture, you are in the studio literally painting that picture. It rarely exists before then. Maybe in your mind, yes, maybe you've done some sketches, yes. But even that process of sketching, putting the pen or pencil or charcoal or paint to paper, to canvas, when you actually are doing that, that's the art of emblazoning. Like it's this, there's a permanence to it where you are bringing something from the ethereal realm up here and collective unconscious, whatever you want to call it. You're bringing something, those ideas, wherever ideas come from, you're bringing that through and putting that on the page. And it's happening right then and there. With music, that permanence doesn't really exist until you hit the studio. So you've written a song, even if you've put it on the bars, you've written down the lyrics, you've done all that stuff. Yes, it exists. You've played it live a million times. Yes, it exists. But there's no permanence to it, which is beautiful in its sense. We can get into that whole thing too with music and the ephemeral nature of it. But until you actually hit the studio and record it to tape, to digital, to a hard drive, to fucking whatever you're recording it to, then it becomes, once you hit record and you finish recording, boom, now it becomes something tangible. So it's this weird, like, the studio is like this crucible. It's this like, blacksmith shop of, banging things together and forming and creating and starting, with raw materials and then bringing it to life somehow and then finishing it. Right. And, the same analogies exist, right? You can over polish something, but that's the thing with the studio. It's really easy to get in there and start twisting knobs and being like, oh, what if it sounds like this? What if it sounds like that? Like, it gets dicey. And the best would be us hitting it in there, all four of us on one mic, hitting record, and boom, and we play it perfect. Because that would be the best representation of kind of our sound, who we are as Wreckless Harbour. We're kind of like indie folk band if you haven't heard us yet. So it has this, we wanted to capture this kind of like live quality or at least like a live element of our instruments, because we actually didn't record it all together like that. For half the band, it was their first time in the studio. And for the rest of us, it was our first time as a band, right? So there's a lot of there's some growing pains. I don't want to say pains in a bad way, but change and new experience and things like that. And honestly, day by day, right? Like it that's the tough part about being in the studio, is that sometimes you show up to the studio someday and you're not feeling your best, or you got sick, or something happened, or you're tired, or whatever. And that might not necessarily give you your best performance, but that might be the only day that you can capture that performance, really. And, in some ways it's hard because you can't keep going back over and over and recording. I mean, luckily in today's day and age with digital recording, you can infinitely go back and overdub and redub and put a million channels on a song. Where back in the day when it was recorded to analog tape, you actually couldn't do that indefinitely because you actually started wearing away because there was a physical connection where the recording was being done onto the tape with the recording head was actually physically touching the tape. So the more and more you rub it over that and record and record and record and over record, you actually start wearing away some of that like magnetic material, whatever's on there, and you lose some of the fidelity of the music. So it happened in Rumors, Fleetwood Mac Rumors, during those sessions. They did so many overdubs and so many multiple takes on songs that they lost a lot of like the high end, like the symbols and like the S's and T's in lyrics and things like that. So super bizarre. But that new, the way digital recording has been created, it has made up for that, lack. What am I trying to say? That, downfall, that con, whatever you want to call it, the problem with analog, it wasn't perfect. That's why digital was created, because we wanted to keep progressing and keep getting better and fix some of these issues that did exist. Pitfalls, if you will. So again, yes, you can do all that stuff, but we were trying to capture this kind of old school recording, and we did it with Stephen Ryan. He's known as Stephen Ryan Music. Check him out. He's a really good friend of our fiddle player John, and he's a really good friend of the rest of the band. We got to know him really well. Spent many hours working with him in the shed in the back. He has a beautiful recording studio in his place just outside Brantford, Ontario. He works with Canary Minor Music. We're working with them as well, with doing some distribution things with them through Stephen, and really excited because doing some of that stuff on your own is pretty tough. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, look at the podcast here. I get this out, but I actually there's like a bit of a middleman service that I go through that actually I only have to upload the stuff once and then it shoots it out to all these platforms. But if you don't have that, and I don't know how much that exists for music, that's where these like distribution or like record companies essentially start to come in now. They start to help push out some of this music and get you on all the back end stuff, as they call it, right? Because when you're watching on Spotify and a band comes up and you see all that information there, and album art and all that stuff starts to come up, all that has to be done obviously by the band as well, right? So there's all this kind of like extra stuff that exists on top of the music when you're uploading. So it's nice to have someone in our corner like Steven and Canary Minor that are going to help us make sure all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, so to speak. And again, working with making album art, we're working with Trevor's cousin, Kevin, and our faithful fifth member of Wreckless Harbour, Jared Helder, who is Lauren's older brother, and he's been great. He's a graphic artist, and he has amazing ideas and ways of bringing our ideas to life too, right? So we've got him working on the album artwork. So we're kind of under this or in this mode, I should say, where we're still honing in on exactly what like the album art is going to look like. Because I don't want to say we were rushed in doing this, but there, life happens. We went on tour. A lot of things happened. We had to wait for mastering to be done. There was a lot of things that we had to wait for until they were complete before we could actually like launch anything. But luckily, because we have great family members and great support here in our Wreckless Harbour community, we were able to kind of like, strike the iron and make it hot instead of waiting for the, iron to be hot to strike. So we are pushing this album art, but we're kind of like honing in. So you'll see for this first artwork with gold, really cool image, really nature. I don't even want to give too much away. I'm not even going to play a sample of the song yet, because hopefully by the time you're hearing this, even if it's a couple days from now, it'll already be out, and you'll be able to listen to it. Just go to our Spotify link and check that out. But you'll also see the album artwork there, which we're starting to work with, like Kevin, Trevor's cousin, and he works with like kind of found objects and cool artwork that has kind of been upcycled and recycled and things like that. And we wanted to capture this like kind of nature vibe. So it's really interesting. And you know, the first song is called Gold. So the image has some gold elements in it, which is super cool. And when we were deciding to release it, you know, talking about all this back end stuff, talking about streaming, we didn't really know exactly how we were going to kind of release the whole thing, because depending on how you look at it, the album is kind of it's not dead, but it doesn't exist the way it used to. You know, if we're talking 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, the way people consumed music was through the album. Yes, there were singles. Yes, they released 45s and little samples of music. But again, it was basically a sample pulled from the album and, you know, put on radio stations and stuff like that. Like, of course, that's important. But most people, when they were like, hey, did you listen to the Led Zeppelin album, Pearl Jam, whoever it is, the new album was the thing. And bands knew this well, and record companies knew that people were going to be listening to an album, and especially when it was on vinyl, so before CD. When it was on vinyl, when you drop that needle, it's kind of hard. Like, I don't know if you've ever listened to vinyl or used a vinyl record player. It's a little bit hard to kind of like move from song to song. You kind of have to have some skill to do it. It's not impossible, but you can't really, you definitely can't fast forward. You can move around the song, don't get me wrong, but to like skip songs and move ahead, it's not super easy. And not everyone had different record players, and not everyone's record player was super awesome. So most of the time when you drop the needle, you listen to the whole side at least, right? There was a side, 24 minutes a side, 48 minutes tops on a record, right? Like, that's a big thing. You have to be careful. But that was just how you listen to music. So people were used to listening to music like that. Bands were used to writing music like that. That's how you got concept albums. That's how you got this whole thing of people being like, I'm going to listen to this whole album start to finish. I'm going to sit there with headphones, flip, you know, attention spans were a little bit longer before too. But again, once, you know, all the piracy and all the Napster stuff that happened in the early 2000s and all this stealing of music and devaluing of the music industry, it really scared the shit out of these record companies and these bands. They had no idea. There was a chance that it was going to be, you know, who the fuck would make music if there was like, I mean, that's not true. People are going to make music. Look at us. But who the hell is really going to make music with $0 on the end of the day? It costs money to do this. You have to buy fucking instruments at least, right? So like, you know, the music industry was scared. They had no idea what was going to happen. They had no idea how they were going to battle this piracy. So what iTunes did and Apple and Steve Jobs, I guess, and the rest of the music industry, they were like, let's make each song $1. $1, 99 cents, actually. Let's make each song 99 cents. Boom. Done. Easy. People will buy one song for 99. They'll buy the new Jay-Z song. They'll buy the new whatever. U2, whoever. But what that did, unfortunately, is it completely devalued what a song is worth. I mean, before, you know, you were looking at maybe there was 12 songs on an album, 10 to 12 songs on an album, and it was like $20. So it was actually more than $1 per song, but you never really looked at it like that. You looked at it like, oh, I'm buying the whole thing. There's artwork, there's a sleeve, there's a whole fucking thing. So like, I don't know if people really looked at it like, oh, this is how many dollars per song on this fucking album. Like, what are we talking about? And then there was double albums. There's all types of shit, right? So when you make a song $1, you start to think, oh fuck, like, well, why am I paying $20 for an album that has only 10 songs on it or something like that, right? So we're starting to talk about we're devaluing music, And then when streaming came out, yes, it's a way to recoup a little bit of that money, but like majority of the artists, over 80% of the artists on those streaming platforms aren't actually making money. You know, you kind of chalk it up to a marketing dollar usually, because it's hard. You have to have thousands, you know, tens of thousands of streams before you kind of make any real money at the end of the day. And again, that's not necessarily what we're in this for. It'd be nice. Hey, why not? And we think people are going to like the stuff. So that's why we have to have it on streaming so people can fucking listen. Because like I was saying before, you see our stuff. Oh, look they have all their ducks in a row. And then you try to listen to us and it's like, where the fuck? I swear, and we've been talking about this as a band forever, I swear that's why we haven't got as many, like, you know, larger festival gigs and other gigs, because I think people see us, they go, oh, cool, let's just look up their Spotify real quick, and they don't see anything, and they kind of go, well, what the fuck? Who am I? I don't even know if they think we're amateurs or whatever. They just go, well, how am I supposed to listen to them? Peace. So again, yes, YouTube, whatever, but YouTube's weird, or it's not necessarily the perfect representation of who we are now, because a lot of those videos are older now too, right? So anyway, be really nice to get that out there more, get that up there on the streaming platform, so that when we do, because, you know, soon enough, we're going to have to apply for next year's Supercrawl, next year's festivals, Festival of Friends in Hamilton. You know, we're trying to go on a little bit of a brewery tour, there and back again tour, of a bunch of the breweries in Ontario. So I'm going to start to kind of chat it up with some of them and see if I can pull some strings in the old brewing industry, and start spreading the word that way. Because then that's going to be fun. We get to start pushing the album, because like I said, with that album, with the idea of the album dying, we kind of didn't want to just release the whole album at once. So what we're doing is we're releasing this single coming out this Friday, Gold. Then we're going to release another one in October. Then we're going to release 4 more songs. So the first little batch is like a 6-song EP. We'll have different artwork for that stuff, and then that's going to be it for the holidays and into spring. And then we're going to do the same thing in February. We're going to release 1, we're going to release another, we're going to release 5. So there'll be 11 songs altogether on the album. It's called Step Lightly. That'll be, again, the full project will be coming out next year. But by the end of November this year, you're going to see 6 brand new songs, or freshly recorded songs at least, from Wreckless Harbour. So really looking forward to that stuff. I'm really looking forward to seeing the reception, seeing what people think, because and you know this one might not necessarily make big waves, because it's kind of like I use this analogy with the band. You know, it's like when you're about to dive into, you're about to do a high dive off a cliff. You're diving off a cliff. You throw that fucking rock down first to kind of perturb the water a little bit, so you're not fucking going in flat watts. And that's what our first single drop is going to be. Throwing that stone out there, making a little splash, hopefully a large splash, but a splash. A large splash, making a splash, a very nice splash. Anyway, sorry, I went to Trump there for a second, but... and then we're going to follow it with the second release, which I'll keep under the hat for now. And then a nice little 6-song EP. So some nice fall, early winter listening with Wreckless Harbour. Check it out. Again, I'll put some links around so you can find us. Wreckless Harbour with a W if you're just listening and you want to just search it up. But again, thank you all for supporting us. Hope y'all enjoy the first song coming out soon. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, y'all. Wreckless Harbour. Peace.